Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching TVP World's Election Night Special. Today, millions of Poles, both in the country and abroad, cast their votes to elect the next president of the Republic of Poland. Just as a reminder, for another 20 minutes, we're obliged to respect the election silence, which means that the only thing we can talk about is voter turnout. It is my pleasure to welcome my co-host, TVP World's chief political correspondent, Dahmen, who has the latest turnout numbers. Aaron, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Klaudia. Like you say, 20 minutes to go until we have that first exit poll of the 2025 presidential election. And like you say, electoral silence means we can't really talk about much else except for this. As of 5 o'clock this evening, 50.69% have gone to the polls. That's according to the National Electoral Commission. Now, these are still incomplete figures, but let's compare them to the last presidential election in 2020 and then the general election in 2023, which of course saw a record turnout. So today's numbers tracking high, and we can expect them to keep rising over the coming hours. Now, remember this, if no candidate tonight gets more than 50% majority in this first round, the top two will head to a final face-off on the 1st of June. So all these faces, all these numbers, they will firm up at 9 o'clock. We will have that exit poll with you as soon as it drops. So we'll see you soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Aaron. We are now moving to our correspondents who are on the ground in campaign HQs across Poland. We have Kazimierz Łysiak in Sandomierz at the headquarters of the Civic Coalition, Sonia Agata-Biszczan in Gdańsk with the Law and Justice Party, and Piotr Miszczuk in Warsaw at the Confederation Party campaign headquarters. We will be back with them after the exit poll results are out at 9 p.m. And now we are moving on. Organizing fair and democratic election is no small feat, let alone an election where foreign agents use hybrid warfare tactics to disrupt the electoral process. Russia has been found meddling with election results in multiple countries, including Georgia, Moldova, and recently Romania. Here is our original report on how Moscow's influence reached far beyond the borders of Russia.
According to Polish authorities, Russia's shadowy hands have attempted to get a grip on the 2025 Polish presidential elections. Poland's Digital Affairs Minister Krzysztof Gawkowski reported a significant increase in cyber attacks traced to Russian sources, with nearly 2,000 incidents recorded in a single day and an estimated 60,000 to 70,000 attacks per month. These attacks targeted critical infrastructure, including water and electricity networks, aiming to sow panic and distrust in state institutions. Same goes for Russia's alleged attempts to recruit Polish citizens through the darknet, offering financial rewards for engaging in activities that would further destabilize the state. Another layer of Russia's cyber offensive were disinformation campaigns, specifically Operation Doppelganger. It involved creating fake versions of reputable Polish news websites to spread misinformation and disinformation to sway Polish voters and spread Russian narratives. Russia's shadowy dealings didn't stop in the cybersphere, however, as Polish authorities have linked the Kremlin to a series of arson attacks, particularly the torching of the shopping center at Warsaw's Marywilska 44th Street, once again aimed at sowing distrust in public institutions and the state.
By meddling with multiple elections across different countries, Russia is doing by stealth what it is doing openly in Ukraine, infiltrating and interfering in the democratic processes of sovereign nations. Joining me now in the studio to talk about hybrid warfare in the context of the Polish presidential election is Igor Prostasowicki, cybersecurity expert from Vistula University. Good evening and thank you for joining on this important night here in Poland. So let's start from the beginning. Why is election meddling so dangerous? And what are some of the most severe consequences?
It's one of the most significant events that take place in a society, and every single significant event that is happening among the nation brings out the trolls out of the internet and creates the opportunity to make all sorts of actions, including misinformation, misleading information, all sorts of cyber attacks, forwarded, unforwarded, directed, undirected. So you just name the thing and it's going on currently.
So what are some effective means of fighting election meddling by Russia? We know that they have influences all across the continent, all across the world. How do we address that issue?
Basically, we're trying to verify what is currently shown on the internet through social media and through other platforms. And as soon as qualified services verify the information and connect it to any sort of external influences, just cut the information off, notify whoever is the services administrator, and those sort of informations are being taken off out of the platforms.
So how effective would you say has been this part of the hybrid warfare, effectively, that Russia waged against Europe and against the West?
Unfortunately, it is quite effective because we trust whatever we read on social media. And even if we face the information that is paid campaign, that comes from unknown sources, it's like single drop that is able to shape a canyon. First of all...
Sorry to interrupt you, but I would just like our viewers to pay attention to the pictures which they can see on their screens as of now. This is one of the elements of hybrid warfare that Russia is now officially confirmed to have waged against Poland. Those are the pictures of Marwilska shopping center in Warsaw, something that we've reported here on TVP World before, part of the hybrid warfare because the fire was actually connected to the Kremlin. So this is one of those examples.
Yes, exactly. And if we connect the dots, if we combine all those small droplets that are directed towards our nation, we will be facing the problems like undermining the trust towards government, towards whatever organizations responsible for protecting and organizing the society we have. And with that outcome, we can expect real influence on elections results, for example.
How would you relate this issue to the use of social media? Because this is one of the biggest carriers of information in our modern world, and it has access to particularly some groups in the society that might have not been reached with that information before. How do you think Russia is using social media?
Well, that is a particular problem because every single decision we make online, in social media, in browsing, and doing whatever we do on a daily basis is shaping the information bubble that is created around us. So then all this information that is being presented to us as the platform's users are carefully directed, are carefully taken, and the outcome is if we trust or if we browse through untrusted information, the fake news once, the risk that we're going to face it again rises. And after first material that we interact with, the first material that catches our attention, we may be facing another one and another one, no matter what source of this information is. Yes, exactly.
It's basically tightening our scope of view.
So it really influences the overall results of the elections because by accident or accidentally by spreading the news, we may become another resource in this entire chain that is influencing the entire nation.
Would you say that the society as a whole in Europe and in the West has been quite susceptible to this sort of manipulation when it comes to media and spread of fake information, for example?
And again, unfortunately, yes. That is because the way the internet works today, it doesn't matter whether the information we're spreading is true. What matters is how long can it catch the attention of another user. So if we talk about any sort of drastic scenes or any sort of manipulated but very interesting material, we may expect that it's going to spread like a virus. And people are going to share it, and other people are going to take it.
It's a great metaphor.
Yes, exactly. Even if we take it for a joke at the beginning, it may change the scope, the view on the reality from our perspective, because the longer we repeat the lie, it gets closer to becoming true.
The lie repeated 1,000 times.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to, since we're still in the period of electoral silence for another few minutes, if I may, I would like to mention, because on Sunday it wasn't just Poland that was making a landmark presidential decision. We know that Romania saw the second round of its presidential election as well, where Russian interferences wreaked havoc because the election had to be repeated. So I would like to take this moment to connect with our correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski in Bucharest, who has more on the subject. Good evening, Paweł. So what can you tell us about the outcome so far, especially when it comes to that particular Russian interference?
Well, when you mention Russian interference, Romania is no stranger to it, because as you rightly mentioned, half a year ago, the Constitutional Court of Romania annulled the first round of presidential elections, and it had to be annulled, citing foreign malign interference that was to promote an extreme right pro-Russian candidate, Călin Georgescu, who surprisingly won the first round of these failed presidential elections because of a very successful TikTok campaign. He was then a relatively unknown independent candidate, and he was eventually banned from running in the presidential rerun. A presidential rerun, which the presidential runoff was held today. And in today's runoff, Dahmen, a centrist mayor of Bucharest, was facing George Simion. George Simion, who was the leader of the right-wing Our Party. He also took part in this failed presidential vote half a year ago, however, with moderate success. But over this time, he consolidated the votes of the Romanian right and, most importantly, received support from Călin Georgescu himself. He won the first round of the rerun by a landslide. However, according to the exit polls that have just been released, he lost the presidential runoff, having secured 45% of the vote, whereas his opponent, Dahmen, received around 55% of the vote. However, we have to be careful with these results, because exit polls typically do not include the votes of the diaspora, and the diaspora in the first round of presidential elections voted predominantly for George Simion, so we will have to wait for early morning hours on Monday for the final vote count.
Thank you so much. That was Paweł Trzaskowski reporting from Bucharest live. Thank you for joining. So we've heard from Paweł, and I would like to bring a quote. Romania dodged a bullet, is how a former deputy head of NATO, Mircea Georgiana, puts it, but it came very close. After what we've heard, after what we're seeing, after what we're encountering, was this a cautionary tale for Poland?
It might be, but if we compare the exit polls that we have today with previous elections, it's impossible to find anything that would be extraordinary, that would totally differ today's elections from the previous ones. So in Poland, probably everything is going just straight on.
And how would you say what we can do, us as people who receive information, us as people who need to vote? What do we do in order to be able to find the correct information, especially in terms of this Russian disinformation that's been circling around?
Well, since we had the events of misinformation in the previous days, the first thing we could do is just pay extra caution about every single information that we receive. Even if we receive this information from our relatives, from the closest colleagues, it might be misleading, because you see, with today's social media, it's like even if we share some information that is potentially insignificant, like somebody spreads information about lost things on local groups, it can be changed. Whatever content has been shared previously can be changed in the elections day, and we might become this sort of pole that spreads the news further and further.
Hopefully, our social media literacy is going to increase with time. Igor Protasowicki, cybersecurity expert from Vistula University, thank you for joining me on this important night.
My pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. And soon at 9 p.m., to be exact, we'll learn the results of the exit polls for Poland's 2025 presidential election. But what powers does the Polish president actually wield? Here's a quick explainer to make things clearer.
After a strenuous fight against the communist regime, the nation of Poland democratically elected its first free president, Lech Wałęsa, in 1990. Since then, the post has been held by 4 democratically elected officials: Aleksander Kwaśniewski, Lech Kaczyński, Bronisław Komorowski, and Andrzej Duda, all of whom gained a set of powers and responsibilities after the ratification of the 1997 Polish constitution, still in use today. The first president to rule under the new legislation was Aleksander Kwaśniewski, who served 2 terms from 1995 to 2005. The 1997 constitution defines the president as part of the executive branch of government and the head of state. The president's executive powers include being the commander-in-chief of the Polish armed forces, representing Poland internationally through state visits and signing treaties, some of which require approval from the Polish parliament, the Sejm, and arguably, most importantly, appointing a prime minister following parliamentary elections. As for legislative powers, the president can initiate legislation, sign bills into law, or refer them to the Constitutional Tribunal. He could also veto laws, though this decision could be overridden by a 3/5 majority vote in the Sejm. Finally, as part of his judicial branch responsibilities, the president must appoint judges to the Constitutional Tribunal, Supreme Court, and other courts. He also has the power to grant presidential pardons to convicts. Another major presidential power is declaring martial law and states of emergency, but only with Sejm approval and the counter-signature of the Polish Prime Minister. The power to impose martial law has not been used since Poland broke out of the communist regime. The president also has the responsibility of leading the National Security Council, a constitutional advisory body to the president in matters of internal and external security. Soon, a new president will take over all these responsibilities from President Andrzej Duda, who has served as the head of state of Poland since 2015. I have the right to decide who represents us, and I believe it should be a matter of honor and an important civic decision for everyone. It's a pleasure, honestly, because it's great that we have this opportunity in democracy, and I believe that everyone should take advantage of it today.
One vote can make all the difference, so if we want to shape and influence reality, we need to show up at the polling station.
Welcome back. Today is the election night. Back into the studio for one of the most important moments of this year, where Poland is going to pick its next president. And we are very happy to be here on TVP World to be bringing you the latest. And we are only seconds away, to be exact, of finding out the exit polls, which are going to give us an idea of what is going to happen next. Ladies and gentlemen, the clock is about to strike 9 p.m. and the first exit poll results for the 2025 Polish presidential election are finally in. To find out more about who is expected to proceed to the runoff, we have Aaron Dahmen with more. Aaron.
The wait is over, Klaudia. 13 candidates, months of campaigning, and now we can reveal the first exit poll of this presidential race. A couple of surprises when you look at these names and numbers. Ultranationalist Grzegorz Braun finishing in fourth. But of course, the top two here, Rafał Trzaskowski, Karol Nawrocki, it is razor tight. And according to these estimated results, we can confirm that no candidate received the 50% needed to claim victory tonight. That means Rafał Trzaskowski, Karol Nawrocki, we are projected to go head-to-head. That's the centrist Warsaw mayor against the right-wing Nawrocki going head-to-head in a final runoff on June the 1st. It is the government-backed candidate up against the man endorsed by the opposition Law and Justice Party. It is all to play for. Klaudia, this election campaign is just getting underway.
Oh, definitely. The next 2 weeks are going to be very interesting. Aaron, thank you so much for this latest data, something we've been waiting for. Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki are projected to head into a runoff in the Polish presidential election. Let's now cross over to our correspondents in campaign headquarters. So let's take a look at what were the responses. Let's go first to Sandomierz, to Kazimierz Łysiak with the Civic Platform. So good evening, Kazimierz. Tell us, what is the mood like considering the result? The result that is working in favor of Rafał Trzaskowski, but the gap is very small.
Good evening, Klaudia. Right now, Rafał Trzaskowski has begun his speech here. He said, we are going for a victory. They have announced him as the victor here, and the mood here is one of celebration. They are saying that it's very close. Right now, Rafał Trzaskowski is on stage, and he's saying that he is very happy with this
Kazimierz, we have to take this moment because we are going to hear the words of Mr. Trzaskowski, who is speaking now.
Welcome, everyone.
Jestem przekonany,
I'm convinced
wygra cała Polska.
that the whole Poland will win.
Kochani, przede wszystkim chciałem serdecznie podziękować.
First of all, I would
Najpierw
like
chciałem
to
podziękować mojej żonie.
thank
Dziękuję
my
ci bardzo,
wife.
Gosiu.
Thank you very much, Gosia.
Chciałem bardzo podziękować
I would
moim
like
dzieciom,
to thank my
mojej
children,
rodzinie,
my family.
ale przede wszystkim chciałem
But
podziękować
first of
wam
all,
wszystkim.
I'd like to thank all of you.
Wszystkim, którzy oddali na mnie
All
głos.
of you who
Dziękuję
cast
wam
a
bardzo.
vote for me. Thank you very much.
Chciałem podziękować za każdy
I
baner,
would like to
za
thank
każdy
for
uścisk
every
dłoni,
banner,
za każdy
every
wpis w
handshake,
internecie, za
every
waszą ciężką pracę,
post
bo
on the
gdyby nie
internet.
ciężka
I would like to
praca
thank you for your
tysięcy
hard
wolontariuszy,
work.
gdyby nie ciężka praca
If it wasn't
wszystkich
for the
tych,
hard work
którzy
of
się
the thousands of
zaangażowali
volunteers,
w
of
kampanię
those who got
wyborczą,
involved
no
in
i
my
gdyby nie
campaign,
wszyscy ci, którzy
if it wasn't for
oddali
those
głos,
who
nie
voted for
byłoby
me,
tego pierwszego miejsca.
this
Dziękuję wam bardzo.
first place wouldn't be possible. Thank you very much.
Ale ten wynik pokazuje,
This
jak
result
musimy być
shows
silni, jak
how
musimy być
strong we have to be, how
zdeterminowani,
determined we
praca
have to
przed
be,
nami,
how much
którą
work
zaczynamy
there is
już
ahead of
dzisiaj,
us. We will
żeby
start this
wygrać
work
wybory
today
prezydenckie.
to win the
Wiadomo, było to
presidential
od samego
election.
początku i
This
dlatego
was
wszyscy
obvious
musimy
from the
tę
very
ciężką
beginning
pracę
that we
i
will have to
wysiłek
work
włożyć
very
w to
hard. We have to put a lot of
a
effort
wtedy
into this
wygra cała
victory,
Polska.
and then the whole Poland will be victorious.
Z tego miejsca chciałem
From
także
this place,
podziękować
I would also
wszystkim moim
like to
przyjaciołom
thank all of my
z
friends
koalicji 15 października.
from the
Dziękuję wam
15th
bardzo.
of
Chciałem
October
podziękować,
coalition. Thank
Magdalenie
you very
Biejat,
much.
chciałem
I would like to
podziękować
thank to Magdalena
Szymonowi
Biejat,
Hołowni, chciałem
Szymon
podziękować
Hołownia. I would like to
Adrianowi
thank
Zandbergowi,
Adrian
chciałem
Zandberg.
podziękować
I would like to
profesor
thank
Senyszyn.
Professor
Dziękuję wam
Senyszyn.
bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Chciałem też pogratulować
I would
wszystkim
also
innym
like to
kandydatom,
congratulate all
którzy
the other
stanęli do
contestants,
tego wyścigu o
all the other
najbardziej
candidates
zaszczytny i najbardziej
in the
odpowiedzialny
race
urząd w
for
Polsce,
the most
urząd
prestigious
prezydenta
office in
Rzeczpospolitej.
Poland, the
A przed
office of the
nami
President of the
ostatnia
Republic
prosta
of
i
Poland.
zwyciężymy!
The last stage is ahead of us and we will win.
Kochani, chcę wam powiedzieć,
I'd
dlaczego
like to
jestem
say
tutaj w Sandomierzu właśnie wśród was.
to all of you,
Dlatego, że dokładnie
why
9
am I here in
lat temu,
Sandomierz in front of all
18
of you?
maja,
Because the
dokładnie o tej
19th of May,
godzinie nadchodziła nad
8 years
Sandomierz
ago,
fala kulminacyjna
there was
powodzi.
the
Wtedy byłem
flood
razem z wami.
coming into Sandomierz, and
Podjąłem
I was
decyzję o tym,
here
że
with
użyjemy
you,
ciężkiego
and I
sprzętu
took the
po to, żeby
decision to use
przygotować
heavy
koryto
equipment
rzeki
to
na
prepare the river
falę powodziową
for
i
the
obroniliśmy wtedy
flood
Sandomierz
wave,
razem.
and we protected
Obroniliśmy go przed
Sandomierz
powodzią.
together. We protected Sandomierz against the flood together.
This was Rafał Trzaskowski's speech after the exit poll results, and we are now moving to Karol Nawrocki, who's also giving a speech after the results were released. Let's take a look.
Tak, rzeczywiście
Yes,
zwyciężymy w tych
indeed, we
wyborach.
will win in
Jesteśmy
this
do tego
election.
gotowi,
We
jesteśmy
are ready for it. We
zdeterminowani.
are
To wszystko
determined.
skończy się
This
naszym
will
wspólnym
all end
zwycięstwem,
with our
zwycięstwem
joint victory,
Polski.
Poland's victory.
Na samym początku
At
bardzo
the very
chcę
beginning,
podziękować
I would like to
milionom
thank
Polaków, którzy
millions of Poles
oddali na mnie
who
swój głos.
voted for
Milionom
me,
Polaków i Polek,
millions of
którzy
Poles
nie ulegli
who
presji,
did not succumb to
propagandy,
the pressure,
fałszu, kłamstwa,
propaganda,
nie ulegli sile
falsehoods,
instytucji
did not
państwa
succumb to
Donalda
the strength
Tuska.
of
Mieli
Donald
siłę,
Tusk's
mieli
state.
odwagę,
They had the
mieli
strength, the
determinację,
courage and
żeby
determination
oddać
to
głos na
vote
swojego
for their
kandydata,
candidate,
Karola
Karol
Nawrockiego.
Nawrocki.
Za to wam z całego serca
A
dziękuję.
heartfelt
Jestem
thank
z
you
tego
to
dumny.
all of you for this. I am proud because of this.
Jestem i wdzięczny i dumny
I
i
am grateful
zobowiązany
and
wobec
pride
tych
and
głosów,
obliged
ale jestem przede wszystkim
to so
dumny
many
z
of you.
tego,
But first
że
of all,
jestem
I am
jednym z
proud
was.
that I am
Jestem
one of you.
jednym z was
I am one
i
of you,
będę
and
prezydentem
I will be
Polek
the
i Polaków
president
i będę
of Polish
waszym
people.
głosem w
I
Pałacu
will be your
Prezydenckim.
voice
To
in the presidential
obiecuję.
palace.
Te
That
wybory
I can promise to you.
rzeczywiście były
This
najmniej
election
sprawiedliwe.
was the least fair
W ciągu ostatnich 35
in the last
lat.
35
Były to
years.
wybory nieuczciwe.
This was
Strumień
unfair election, a
propagandy i
stream of
kłamstwa
propaganda,
finansowane
lies,
przez spółki
financed
Skarbu
by
Państwa.
the state-owned
Instytucje
companies.
państwa polskiego wykorzystywane
State
do
institutions
walki z
were
kandydatem
used to fight
obywatelskim.
the civic
Zabrana
candidate.
subwencja partii, która mnie
The
popierała, Prawu i
Money
Sprawiedliwości.
was taken away from the
I
party
co?
that supported
I
me,
nic.
the Law and Justice,
Jesteśmy i
and it
wygramy.
all went to nothing. We are here and we will win.
Ta kosmetyczna różnica
This
między mną a zastępcą
very small
Donalda Tuska, ten
difference
wynik
in votes
blisko
between me
remisu
and the
przywołuje
deputy
symbolikę tego
Donald
miejsca,
Tusk
ale też
brings
wielką
the
postać
symbolism
polskiej
of this
historii.
place, but also
Jesteśmy
a
w
great
miejscu symbolicznym.
man of Polish history. We are
Let's
in a
take a look
symbolic
at those
place.
exit poll results now for TVP. Remember, this is just an exit poll. More numbers will come in over tonight, over tomorrow, and we will have the final results in hopefully the coming 24 hours. But that, of course, is always up for question. Here is that exit poll result. Rafał Trzaskowski, he was the front runner. He led every major poll of the campaign. He's the Warsaw mayor. He's the centrist government-backed front runner. He's on 30.8%, just behind him. Really just behind him, 29.1%. Karol Nawrocki, he's the Eurosceptic historian. He's backed by the right-wing opposition Law and Justice Party, and he, as you in some ways saw in that speech there, he's been imitating Donald Trump's nationalist rallying against the old world order. He's been trying to paint Mr. Trzaskowski as part of the liberal left, and he, at the beginning of his campaign, because he was so unknown, was neck and neck with Sławomir Mencen, who you can see on 15.4%. They at one point were sitting around 18% each. Sławomir Mencen being a far-right libertarian, the dark horse, a staunch conservative, who was really rebranding his identity and growing a disillusioned voter base on TikTok. Well, his result is strong, but not as strong as he would have hoped, because, as I say, at one point, he was sniffing around second place. So neck and neck at the top. One of the biggest surprises of this exit poll, without a doubt, is Grzegorz Braun. He's an ultra-nationalist, he's pro-Russian. He captured headlines for burning an EU flag, the fire extinguisher stunt in the Polish parliament. And I want to go back now to Kazimierz Świstak, who is at Rafał Trzaskowski's campaign HQ. Kazimierz, are you there with us?
Hey, yes, Aran, I'm here.
So tell me about the mood there, because we saw that speech just moments ago, and Rafał Trzaskowski was talking about effectively being a winner, but he's a winner, but just in this first round.
Exactly, but you can see no hesitation on his part here. He is saying that he is aiming to win, that he is aiming to grab that victory in the second round, that now the hard work begins, as we have 2 weeks before the second round on the 1st of June. He is thanking all his voters, but he is saying this is not the end, that his goal is to unlock the full reforms that the ruling coalition have been trying to push through, but were unable to do so because of the current incumbent president, Andrzej Duda, hailing from the Conservative Law and Justice Party. So Rafał Trzaskowski is saying, let's complete the task. Choose me as president and I will enable these reforms to go through. He is guaranteeing this. He is saying that he will be cooperating with the ruling camp in getting these reforms through the door, and that the victory will be his. He is claiming victory now. Of course, the result is very much neck and neck.
What a fortnight we have ahead of us. Kazimierz Świstak at the campaign headquarters for Rafał Trzaskowski. And Klaudia, let's go to Law and Justice.
Yes, definitely. So from Sandomierz, we are moving to Gdańsk, to HQs of Law and Justice Party, and we have our very own Sonia Agata-Biszczan there on the spot. So what can you tell us about the response to the exit polls, especially in the context of the last two speeches?
Good evening, everyone. Well, I could barely hear what you were saying, so that kind of indicates what the atmosphere is here. Obviously, it'll include chanting and similar messaging as to that, in fact, this candidate will win. Aside from that, let me also highlight that on our way here, one of the crew members asked two questions. The first question was, do you think this will grasp a lot of media attention? Because I think it will be maybe just us and another crew. Well, let me tell you, I counted at least 30 cameras and then I stopped counting because I'm not really great at math. Aside from that, the second question was, do you think that Jarosław Kaczyński will attend the event? And we didn't know the answer to that, but the crew member said, well, it's just the first round. Well, Jarosław Kaczyński, I believe I just saw him and he is also in the audience. So it also highlights this relationship between Karol Nawrocki, who on paper is an independent candidate, but in fact, when you look around this room, which consists of Law and Justice members and aficionados, apathy is not one of the things that you see. In fact, this atmosphere probably highlights that this presidential election is a lot more than about who will be the next resident in the presidential palace. Law and Justice used to be the ruling party, and experts that we spoke to, TVP World, in the recent days pointed out that as of late 2023, they've been holding on to this presidential position as the last grasp on power. President Andrzej Duda has vetoed or threatened to veto the ruling government's initiatives. And experts noted that we could expect a similar trajectory from Karol Nawrocki. So this, if proven true, would of course be good news for Law and Justice and bad news for Civic Coalition. But that probably is a conversation for another day. For now, Law and Justice is celebrating, Karol Nawrocki is celebrating, and we will see what the future holds. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Woo! So many eager noises in the Law and Justice Party headquarters. This was Sonia Agata-Biszczan reporting live from Gdańsk. And now, those were our correspondents at the campaign HQs. It is my pleasure to welcome back my co-host Aaron Dahmen, who sat here with me a second ago, joining me now to discuss the exit poll results. We're also joined by Marcin Zaborowski, TVP World's Europe editor. Gentlemen, shall we talk about the exit polls?
What an exit poll, eh, Marcin? We've been covering this for months now, this election, and we have not seen Karol Nawrocki perform this well in a poll. He was, like I mentioned earlier, sitting at 18-19% with Sławomir Mencen at one point.
Well, there was a moment about 10 days ago when a difference between Trzaskowski and Nawrocki was around almost 10%. So it's been closing since, but never as much as now. So it's really a wide open race at this point in time. And the result is unexpected to some extent. Yeah.
So what do you think is the reason behind this gap tightening?
Well, it is a super divided society, of course. And people, when they actually make this decision, that when they go and vote, they vote with their guts, really. They forget about these kind of, the issues which were happening in the run-up to the election. They forget about the affair with the apartment. They forget about this and that. They vote on their core beliefs. And because this is a very polarized society, this is very much reflected in this, in what we see in the opinion, not in the exit polls at this point in time. So that's the reason for that, I believe.
I find it really interesting because Karol Nawrocki, I mean, you mentioned the apartment affair, this story that he picked up an apartment from an elderly man named Jerzy. He sort of claimed he only had one flat, but he actually had two registered to his name. Did he sign a contract for lifelong care? I mean, these are questions of integrity, and they've plagued him throughout the entire campaign. And yet, the first exit poll shows him neck and neck with the centrist frontrunner, who, Rafał Trzaskowski, at some point was sitting at 36, 37, 38%. What happens next? I mean, is the question now mobilisation?
Yes, indeed. I think the mobilisation is the key issue here. We will see what the people who came, third, fourth, fifth, and so on, what will they advise their voters to do?
Grzegorz Brown, for example.
Grzegorz Brown, that's actually probably the second biggest surprise here. Him coming fourth, he's the ultra nationalist. He's more radical than Mencen, who's already very radical. So it's unexpected. I don't think that any opinion polls were showing Brown, coming fourth with a support of 6%. That's the man who's openly anti-Semitic. That's the man who's openly not just anti-LGBT. He's more than that. He would want to ban the LGBT activity altogether, not just not endorse that. So that's we're talking about a person who wants to criminalize sexual minorities and run on extreme nationalistic platform. So that's what's going on here, and that person got 6% of vote, which probably translates into some millions, I guess. Yeah. I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but that's we did not expect that.
It definitely reflects on the society.
It does reflect on the society. It shows that there is a sector within the society which is very conservative, very radical, more radical than Mr. Mencen.
So, well, I was just going to say, Klaudia, if you don't mind, what does that tell us about the second round? Because here you have a vote that reflects certain parts of society that, I mean, they're not going to vote for Rafał Trzaskowski, right? If anyone, they'll vote for Karol Nawrocki. So what does that tell us about how much support Karol Nawrocki is yet to pick up?
Exactly,
from
that was
someone,
my question as well.
Great minds think alike. Sławomir Mencen, Grzegorz Brown.
Well, doing a kind of a rough maths of where the ideological sympathies of those who came after the second place came, we still see very much 50-50 race. It's going to be razor sharp. Just as Rafał Trzaskowski, in fact, predicted a few days back. He was saying it's going to be razor difference, and we just did not expect it, that it would be already in the first round, such a razor difference. But we already see it here. But when you combine the votes of those who are on the left, who are at the center, with those of Rafał Trzaskowski, you get around 50%, and pretty much the same thing when it comes to Mr. Mencen. I mean, not Mr. Mencen, but all the other, more conservative candidates. It is, however, the expectation that some part of Mr. Mencen's electorate, who came third with 15% of support, may be leaning towards Rafał Trzaskowski. And these are the people who are, pro-market libertarians. In the election in 2020, almost 40% of those voted eventually for Rafał Trzaskowski. So we probably will be expecting here Mr. Trzaskowski trying to be open to attract this electorate.
So over the next 2 weeks, as this competition for the highest office in the country continues, what do you think will be the next points of focus for these two candidates that will have to meet face-to-face again during the second round of the presidential election?
They will have to pick up endorsements. Let's see whether that's not going to happen already tonight. I'm not sure whether it has not already happened. We could see here, but we don't have we didn't hear everything here, but we could hear that Rafał Trzaskowski was thanking Mr. Hołownia and Mr. Biejat.
Some of these left candidates. Yeah?
And these having endorsements from these two candidates who come from the parties which are part of the coalition which supports Mr. Trzaskowski would be crucial here. So the sooner he gets this endorsement, the better for him. Mr. Nawrocki will be doing exactly the same thing with Mr. Mencen and with Mr. Brown and with tiny other conservative or more nationalistic votes which were also represented in this ballot.
Just to follow up on these two coming weeks ahead of the second round of the election, what do you think is Sławomir Mencen and the Confederation going to do? Because as we can see by the results, there's a substantial number of votes that were cast for Mr. Mencen. Now the question is, what is going to be the Confederation's strategy going forward?
So Mr. Mencen got 15.4. 15.4, and there was a moment in the campaign that he was going neck and neck with Mr. Nawrocki. When the apartment scandal hit, then Mr. Mencen very openly criticized Mr. Nawrocki. And at this point, him and Mr. Nawrocki went completely the opposite paths. I would be very surprised if Mr. Mencen was to support Mr. Nawrocki now. I think Mr. Mencen will not, in my view, will not support Mr. Nawrocki. That's my expectation.
So this election, as we've often discussed, is crucial for two reasons. One is Poland's role in Europe. Will it move closer to Brussels, or will it revert to its previous Eurosceptic path? And the second thing is well, what direction Poland ends up going in domestically as well. Will it follow some sort of MAGA Donald Trump path, or, as we appear to have seen in Romania tonight, will it indeed, again, go towards a more liberal roadmap? I'm interested, Marcin, what does either candidate mean in tangible terms for Poland's role? I mean, Rafał Trzaskowski, we know he's pro-EU, he's pro-NATO, he's very much pro-European, but Karol Nawrocki not so much, right?
No, not so much. And one of the observations which come out from election like that, as well as the election in Romania, is that people tend to vote less and less on issues. Like questions like, for example, education, taxes, economic policies. They were almost not visible in this campaign. That's not why people voted for one of these candidates or another.
Security.
Security would be one of those, really. So, but because every one of these candidates is trying to position himself that I'm the person who provides you with security.
I am the leader.
I'm the one who
You're safe with me.
You are safer with me. I mean, all of them were doing the same thing, yeah. And actually, the whole spectrum moved, you might say, to the right in Poland. Almost every single candidate has progressively actually moved to the right, maybe with the exception of the two, left-wingers here.
For now, let's put a stop here. Let's take a moment's break from the conversation and we move over to London, one of the world's biggest voting centers for Poles abroad.
Across to Alex Carrier. He's standing by. Good evening, Alex. You've been at polling booths throughout the day. How has it all played out on the ground?
Good evening, Aaron. Well, of course, expatriates in the UK were all very, very invested in registration. For this presidential election, and that really reflected on the ground. You could sense the importance for people. Although they were very far away from Poland, the election was very, very close to their heart indeed. Now, to be clear, we look back at the election back in 2023, 40% voted for the Civic Coalition. So there's absolutely a skew for expatriates in the United Kingdom in that favor. But there was some really interesting historical ties with some people we spoke to. Some had had their uncles or their grandfathers fighting alongside the RAF during the Battle of Britain. Others had lived in the UK when the UK left the European Union, something that many Poles I spoke to today thought was a bad idea. And so that was very much reflected in those voting patterns. They felt being closer to the European Union would be better for Poland. That was the strong sentiment we had. But as I said, 160,000 people registered to vote across the United Kingdom. More than 40,000 back in 2023 registered right here in London. From my understanding, it is the biggest hub for Poles abroad voting in this election. You really had the sense, particularly from two teachers I spoke to, who felt that this would be so important for their students, for the future generations in Poland and Poles across the world, to have that direction. Now, that turnout, that record registrations for voting, really reflecting the importance of this election, but also that personal experience was here. The strong historic ties, the strong connection between the UK and Poland historically, but also in more recent history. They see Brexit, the ones I spoke to certainly, as a bad thing, as something the UK should not have done. And they certainly do not want to see candidates in Poland pushing for a similar move away from the European Union, from NATO. That, of course, is not everybody, but those are the people we spoke to. Those ties of history, those ties of recent politics in the United Kingdom, really playing in the front of mind for so many Poles that I spoke to today here. Very high registration. We don't yet know what the turnout is specifically for the UK, but you can expect it will be very high indeed. What you guys have been discussing, this neck-and-neck exit poll between the two candidates, will be a cause for concern. But I suspect second round for the runoff, you will also see very high turnout here in the UK for Poles casting their vote, because they feel very strongly that this could be existential. This is a historic decision for Poland, and therefore they all want to show up to vote these elections.
Thank you so much. That was Alex Cadier reporting live from London. And now let's come back to our Warsaw studio to continue the conversation on the latest exit poll results and what comes next.
And for that, I want to bring in Adam Tracek, Executive Director at More in Common Poland. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Can I start with a question about Poland's role in Europe and indeed the world? Let's go beyond Poland's borders. What do these two candidates offer that is different between the two of them to the world? So, for example, how does the relationship change between Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki with Washington? How does it change with Berlin?
Well, first of all, it's up to the government to formulate Poland's foreign policy. So it's not the president who is the most important figure in shaping Poland's foreign policy. But of course, the president also plays an important role. And Andrzej Duda, the outgoing president, played a very important role in shaping Poland's relationship with the US, both with President Biden, but also with President Trump, especially after Russia's invasion on Ukraine. So Karol Nawrocki, the Law and Justice candidate, might also be willing to play that stronger role in foreign policy, play that transatlantic card, try to be a very close partner to the US, especially to the Trump administration. And of course, Rafał Trzaskowski is more of a pro-European candidate. He's also, of course, a transatlanticist, also by heart, but he's also a very pro-European politician. But I think what is also crucially important is the fact that Rafał Trzaskowski is a government-backed candidate, which means that his election, his win, possible win in the second round, will basically give the government more space for maneuver. It will be up to the government basically the government and the president will speak with one voice, which is of course also a very important thing when it comes to diplomacy. So this is basically what is the big question before the second round, before the runoff. Will Poland speak in one voice or in two?
How big a deal is that to have a president and a prime minister and government that are speaking with one voice? And how have we seen perhaps the differences between current President Andrzej Duda, who's a law and justice ally, and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk from the Civic Coalition? How have we seen those differences play out on the world stage?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the personality, of course, of the candidates. Andrzej Duda and Radosław Sikorski have been working quite effectively on certain issues. On other issues, not so much. But definitely, when it comes to shaping Poland's relationship with Washington, with the U.S. administration, it has been a quite effective tandem. Let's call it that way. Both the government and the president had similar views on Ukraine, on U.S. involvement in Europe. Although, of course, they have a different ideology and a different mindset than President Trump, of course. But in that case, the cooperation was running quite smoothly, because it is in Poland's strategic interest to have U.S. presence in Europe, to have a strong voice of Washington in Ukrainian affairs. As well, but I mean, we don't know how Karol Nawrocki will operate as well as a possible president. There is definitely a lot of room for conflict. The Polish constitution isn't perfect in that case. It allows a certain duality in formulating foreign policy concepts and ideas. Although, of course, the government is still the more important player, but it could create a certain level of chaos when it comes to shaping Poland's foreign policy.
Adam, if I may, just very short question. I wanted to gauge your views on the polarization. I know that your foundation, More in Common, is looking into the polarization of societies across Europe, the United States, and so on. And how would you read the outcomes of the first round of this election according to the exit polls? This is not results yet, these are just exit polls, so let's be also clear about that. Do you think that they indicate that the polarization is still very much on? In fact, it has probably deepened. And also, don't you think that these exit polls indicate that the entire spectrum, political spectrum in Poland, has moved to the right?
Yes, I think there are two important comments to make about well, the outcome of the election, at least the results that we got from exit polls. Well, first of all, is that 40% of the vote is still up for grabs in the second round, which actually shows that the two leading candidates, Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki, they both together got around 60% of the vote, which is a historically low result, actually, which might suggest that Poles are actually tired of the so-called of the two main parties, of the parties that actually represent the polarization situation in Poland, and are the, let's say, root causes of political polarization in Poland. This might indicate that in the second round, the debates will be much more diverse than they were ahead of the first round. That both candidates, especially Rafał Trzaskowski, will need to kind of diversify his message, speak to both the right and, of course, the liberal left-leaning candidates. And of course, what the result shows us, especially a very good result from Karol Nawrocki, is the fact that voters, both Law and Justice and Civic Platform voters, are extremely loyal. No, there's basically nothing that can change their mind. They remain loyal to their party, to their candidate. You have talked about the scandal around Karol Nawrocki's apartment, and a kind of very dubious and questionable way in which he came into possession of that apartment. It seems to have zero effect on his result. So the answer to your question is both yes and no. Polarization is still strong, which manifests itself in the loyalty of voters to the two leading candidates. But the fact that 40% of the electorate of Polish people voted, so to say, against the two leading candidates, against the two main parties, which is a record high, shows that many people are simply tired of the two mainstream parties and are looking for alternatives, both on the right and of course both on the left as well. And of course, this is a major success for the right in general. They got at least what the exit polls indicate. They got more than 50% of the vote altogether. The government-backed candidates got only 40% of the vote. But it also is a question if the strategy painted by Karol Nawrocki and the Law and Justice Party of basically making this election a referendum against the government, it seems to be a quite successful one.
And how do you think that the choice that polls are going to make in the next 2 weeks, effectively, is going to affect the relationship, Poland's relationship with its partners? For example, France, Germany. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, I think, as I said before, it will be a tricky question if Karol Nawrocki becomes president. He's a much more Eurosceptic president, but he's also a politician, but he's also quite a skeptic when it comes to Ukraine. He was very strict about not sending Polish troops to Ukraine. He basically aligned with Sławomir Mencen on that issue. Which of course will be kind of limiting for Poland's foreign policy. Of course, Rafał Trzaskowski is also against sending Polish troops to Ukraine at the moment. But Karol Nawrocki was very vocal about it. It was one of his main talking points during the debates, which is actually not very much in line of what one of the founding fathers of the Law and Justice Party, the former President Lech Kaczyński, was saying all along. Which makes it kind of a tricky situation on when it comes, as I said, to shaping Poland's foreign policy. Well, of course, Karol Nawrocki, as a more of a Eurosceptic politician, will be more reserved towards Germany, towards France, all European partners basically, and of course will be on the skeptical side when it comes to the reforms of the European Union, which will also be one of the tricky questions. As I said, with Rafał Trzaskowski as the president, it will be much easier for the government to play an important and strong role in Europe and build a stronger partnership with our European partners, as we recently witnessed by signing a treaty, Poland signing a treaty with France. As I mentioned, it will be simply more chaotic. It will be harder for Poland to speak with one voice, which of course in diplomatic situations is very important.
You mentioned Ukraine there. I mean, Mr. Nawrocki has talked about Poland continuing to support Ukraine, but that Poland still needs to maintain its own interests. A, what does that mean? And B, do you think that Kyiv is worried about someone like Mr. Nawrocki being the president of Poland, just a border away?
I think Kiev might be a little bit worried, and I think we don't really know what Karol Nawrocki means by these words, because, well, supporting Ukraine and providing it with financial support, with military support, with intelligence support, but also supporting Ukraine politically is, of course, very much in Poland's interest. It's basically protecting our country from a possible Russian aggression in a few years' time. So it is in Poland's very crucial interest to support Ukraine. What Karol Nawrocki is actually doing, he's kind of flirting with anti-Ukrainian sentiments that emerge in Poland in recent years. Many Poles feel that Ukraine is not thankful enough for the support that Poland is providing. Many Poles feel that Ukrainian refugees and Ukrainian migrants are profiting from our social security systems in a way that is simply it's simply too much for many. So I think these words actually by saying what Mr. Nawrocki is saying, he's basically talking to these people. Well, I'm also tired of certain aspects of our partnership with Ukraine. I do recognize that supporting Ukraine is important on a strategic level, but we should be much more assertive than we were before, which is also quite interesting because it was the Law and Justice government which was very straightforward in supporting Ukraine when Mateusz Morawiecki was prime minister. So this is also kind of a very strong opposition to the line that Law and Justice implemented shortly after Russia's invasion. So it shows you how big of a change that is in Polish politics regarding Ukraine in recent years.
And Klaudia, just as we speak, we can see some numbers coming through from the US, where Nawrocki's leading, 42.3%, Rafał Trzaskowski around 30%, of course Donald Trump and Karol Nawrocki meeting in the White House just a few weeks ago. So some interesting numbers. We'll, of course, keep an eye on that as the night progresses.
And here comes the question for you, Marcin. I wanted to find out what you're thinking about Mr. Nawrocki currently winning in the U.S. How do you think he managed to get voters to vote for him in a majority when it comes to that particular country?
Well, historically, the conservative option in Polish politics have been endorsed by diaspora in the United States. I mean, that's not new. That has been the case many times before. The election 2023 seemed to break that trend. But we are probably back to the square one. And probably Nawrocki's visit to the White House had some impact on how the diaspora in the United States votes. But let's also be clear about it. These numbers do not make a huge difference. The diaspora which actually come and vote in the United States, that's around 100,000, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 120,000. Yeah? So this is really not a big difference in terms of the overall result. It will be interesting to see how diaspora in London voted. We don't have these numbers yet. But they are coming, and that diaspora in London votes in bigger numbers and is much larger. So that number is the one to be watched for. And by the way,
any expectations when it comes to that vote that you just mentioned?
Well, I would imagine that in London we would see a much better result for Rafał Trzaskowski. That was the case in 2023, and also the diaspora in the UK seemed to be kind of upward moving, middle class, even some more aspirational than that. Whereas diaspora in the United States is historically from the southeast of Poland, very, very conservative, with very often occupying low-level service jobs in the United States.
And when I was there covering the US presidential election last year, we went to Częstochowa and out of Philadelphia, and a lot of the Polish diaspora there were supporting Donald Trump. So there you see Karol Nawrocki, of course, imitating Donald Trump's rebellion. Same kind of vibe in the US. Now, Mr. Trzaczek, I want to now ask about NATO, because there's been a lot of talk about NATO, about security in this region, given America's straying away from Europe. Now, Mr. Nawrocki, he talks about NATO's Article 5 being obligatory. He says when he will be president, he will make decisions that are in agreement with the Polish constitution as well as international commitments. But then on the campaign, we saw him struggle to answer what seemed like a simple question initially about whether Poland would come to the aid of the Baltics if Russia invaded. Can you just spell out for us the difference, I guess, in both candidates? My question really is both candidates have been focusing on security. So can you spell out for us what they mean as candidates when it comes to security?
Well, when it comes to Rafał Trzaskowski, it's pretty straightforward. He's a pro-European, pro-NATO, pro-transatlanticist. So it will be kind of, this is the mainstream position. Poland is a member of NATO. It is obliged to fulfill its commitments from Article 5. So Rafał Trzaskowski there will be no surprises with Rafał Trzaskowski. When it comes to Karol Nawrocki, we do face a lot of ambiguity. We don't actually know what he means because he's also quite new to politics and he's also quite new to foreign policy and international politics. So in many cases we simply don't know. And Karol Nawrocki also seems to contradict himself on many occasions when it comes to like more complicated questions. During one of the debates, he was asked the question, what would his reaction be if the US invaded Greenland? And should we support the US or should we support Denmark in that situation? And he didn't have an answer. I don't even think that he kind of understood the paradox within that situation. So in many cases, when it comes to Karol Nawrocki, we simply don't know because 6 months ago, he was not a very known politician. He was the president. He still is the president of the National Institute for Remembrance. And he wasn't dealing with foreign policy. And he was very much aware of that. When he was giving interviews, he was on many occasions talking about his foreign policy experience, and mentioning negotiations with foreign museums, basically with directors of museums all over the world, which basically gives you shows you the lack of I don't want to say diplomatic skills, but definitely lack of experience when it comes to diplomacy. So as I said, in many cases, we simply don't know what Karol Nawrocki means when he talks about NATO or international security.
And when we're looking at both candidates, when we're looking at Mr. Trzaskowski and Mr. Nawrocki, are we to expect any new, maybe unexpected alliances to be forged in time to come? How do you think they're going to play on that ground?
Well, I think it is actually very, very interesting. When you look at Karol Nawrocki's road to presidency, a possible road to presidency, it's pretty straightforward. The right got more than 50% of the vote, so his mission is to make sure that all of them vote for him in the second round, which won't be easy in many cases because, Karol Nawrocki is the mainstream, the representative of the mainstream right, and there are both Menz and Braun are anti-establishment right-wing candidates, although they're still right-wing, they're very much anti-establishment. And of course, Sławomir Mencen ran his campaign on a very strong message, basically saying that both main parties are not fit to govern Poland, and that both main candidates are not fit to be president. But when it comes to Rafał Trzaskowski, it seems that he's facing a much rockier road to presidency. He will both have to mobilize liberal and left-leaning voters, which we know there are not so many, at least in the first round. But he will also have to try to convince at least some of the Sławomir Mencen's voters, as Marcin rightly pointed out, to support his candidacy, which will not be an easy task because, Rafał Trzaskowski will have to look at both sides of the political spectrum and try to find a middle ground which will be acceptable for both of them. But in that sense, his task when it comes to finding proper narratives, political narratives, will be much harder than Karol Nawrocki's.
Thank you so much. Let's now take a moment to look at our feature prepared here on TVP World of what are actual powers bestowed upon the President of the Republic of Poland. So let's take a moment, a little break, and see that report.
After a strenuous fight against the communist regime, the nation of Poland democratically elected its first free president, Lech Wałęsa, in 1990. Since then, the post has been held by 4 democratically elected officials: Aleksander Kwaśniewski, Lech Kaczyński, Bronisław Komorowski, and Andrzej Duda, all of whom gained a set of powers and responsibilities after the ratification of the 1997 Polish constitution, still in use today. The first president to rule under the new legislation was Aleksander Kwaśniewski, who served 2 terms from 1995 to 2005. The 1997 constitution defines the president as part of the executive branch of government and the head of state. The president's executive powers include being the commander-in-chief of the Polish armed forces, representing Poland internationally through state visits and signing treaties, some of which require approval from the Polish parliament, the Sejm, and arguably, most importantly, appointing a prime minister following parliamentary elections. As for legislative powers, the president can initiate legislation, sign bills into law, or refer them to the Constitutional Tribunal. He could also veto laws, though this decision could be overridden by a 3/5 majority vote in the Sejm. Finally, as part of his judicial branch responsibilities, the president must appoint judges to the Constitutional Tribunal, Supreme Court, and other courts. He also has the power to grant presidential pardons to convicts. Another major presidential power is declaring martial law and states of emergency, but only with Sejm approval and the counter-signature of the Polish Prime Minister. The power to impose martial law has not been used since Poland broke out of the communist regime. The president also has the responsibility of leading the National Security Council, a constitutional advisory body to the president in matters of internal and external security. Soon, a new president will take over all these responsibilities from President Andrzej Duda, who has served as the head of state of Poland since 2015.
Right, Marcin, boy, oh boy, it has been a super Sunday because not just here in Poland we've seen voting, but we've actually seen that final runoff in Romania. George Simeon, 46%, Nicușor Dan, 53%. That is an upset victory. 98% of the official votes counted. We saw George Simeon and Karol Nawrocki on the campaign trail just last week. I mean, they were talking about some sort of mega alliance in Central Eastern Europe. Are we seeing reverse momentum at play here? That George Simeon, Romania, is rejecting that idea of a mega alliance or a kind of mega approach, but here in Poland, voters are more keen.
Well, that remains to be seen now. But clearly the result that I understand these are official results already from Romania. It's 98%.
We understand 98% of the official
98% of vote, probably with most of diaspora counting into that. It seems irreversible at this point in time that Mr. Dahmen will actually come out of this election as the winner. That would suggest that the so-called the Trumpist momentum, which was sweeping across Central Europe, with Mr. Nawrocki, Mr. Simeon, who came here to Poland. Then we had Albania, a very pro-Trump candidate in Albania, but that momentum is not picking up. So Poland still is too close to call. We don't know what's going to happen here. But the Romania election suggests that, that there are certain limits to how people would actually go the Trumpist way. But there are some limits here. And that's a very, actually, in some respects, quite surprise victory for Mr. Dahmen, who is a mayor of Bucharest. Until very recently, he didn't have national recognition. Mr. Simeon has campaigned viciously across the country for years, and picking up steam, picking up support, and so on.
So what exactly happened?
Well, I think that what actually happened here is that there are limits to which people are actually prepared to go and support the pro-Trump, extreme nationalistic, Eurosceptic agenda. But Mr. Simeon is a strong advocate of. And he sees Mr. Nawrocki as being in the same line, in the same ideology. The pro-Trump candidate lost in Albania. Let's also remind ourselves about the recent German elections, where the pro-Trump Alternative for Germany party did less at the election booths than the opinion polls were predicting. So it would suggest that really this kind of a pro-Trump revolution is not picking up in Europe to the same extent as it was initially expected.
Well, that was exactly going to be my next question. I mean, is this evidence that in some countries the Trump effect may work? As you say, we need to wait and see with Poland, and there is that final runoff. George Simeon won the first round in Romania as well, and then now he's lost the second round. That Trump effect works in some countries, for example, like America, but not, as you say, across some countries in Europe. Because, I mean, we saw J.D. Vance turn up at the Munich Security Conference, effectively endorse the AfD, and it made no dent on the polls. We saw Elon Musk turn up at the AfD campaign launch, no dent in the polls. So what does that tell us?
Well, it tells us that Europe is not the United States, that we are different. And there's kind of a radical Eurosceptic, pro-Trump, and the conservative, extreme conservative agenda is not the agenda which flies very well even in Central and Eastern Europe.
So how do they cooperate?
And I say even because, yes, let's also be clear about it, that Central and Eastern Europe is more susceptible to that agenda than Western Europe.
So I'll repeat that again. So how are the two supposed to cooperate if the views are so different? Where do we find the common ground?
Well, let's see how long the Trumpist agenda will actually remain in the United States. It could be 4 years only. And if it's 4 years only, it's not making a huge deal of difference to a transatlantic relationship as such. We also see now that after the initial diplomatic opening of Donald Trump towards Russia and his very strong anti-European stance, that he's sort of moderating his stance, I would say. He's becoming less pro-Russian. He is more open to talk to the Europeans right now. So there are some limits there. There's a difference between the radical campaigning and the actual job of governing.
When we go back to some of these speeches that the candidates gave very swiftly after the exit poll results, it was
that was very
9
quick.
o'clock and they were out the door. Early night for both of them, not for us. Rafał Trzaskowski, he talked about this result showing how strong we have to be. Quite a defiant message, kind of saying, yes. What did you make?
I think
he's trying to mobilise, right? He's trying to say, look...
Well, I think that Rafał Trzaskowski's message is the following. In October 2023, people have...
At the general election.
There was general election in Poland, and in this general election, people voted against a conservative Law and Justice Party, who was in government for 8 years and was implementing its Eurosceptic and radical agenda. That was the result in 2023. But then we still have had and we still have a conservative president who blocks the agenda of that government. And what Rafał Trzaskowski is saying, if you want the implementation of what you voted for a year and a half ago, you have to vote for me. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You need to have a president and the government from the same or similar option. Otherwise, we would have a paralysis.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a break for a moment now. Let's cross once more to our correspondents at the campaign headquarters as emotions are still running extremely high. The next 2 weeks are going to be incredibly busy and crucial for the future of Poland. And so first up, we have Kazimierz Łysiak, who is in Sandomierz at the Civic Coalition's headquarters. So the dust is not going to set for a while, Kazik, but what can you tell us about what you've overheard, perhaps, and some people that you spoke to regarding the exit poll results?
All right, Klaudia, so the dust is settling a little bit here. Most of the party members have already dispersed, but Rafał Trzaskowski, who got, according to the exit polls, this could still change, but about 30.8% of the vote. He already said that he's going to a different city because the hard work is beginning now. He said, we're not stopping, we're already touring, and this is where the real race is beginning. Look, there was a little bit of a surprise that this result was that much neck and neck, but everyone predicted that it would be a rather close race between Trzaskowski and Nawrocki in the end, especially when it came to the second round. Now there will be a battle one-on-one between Trzaskowski and Nawrocki, and it is now high time for these two candidates to try and win as much of the support as they can before June 1st. But if there was any concern among the members of the Civic Coalition here, you couldn't really tell, because all of them were, first of all, happy with that result because Trzaskowski got the biggest result in the election, and secondly, they are very certain that he will win in the second round of the election. And just to remind you, Rafał Trzaskowski is the centrist frontrunner from the ruling coalition. He is pro-EU, pro-NATO, and he made his message here tonight very much about stability in Poland, about cooperation with the ruling coalition, about the reforms that the ruling coalition has been trying to implement. There was also a little bit of a surprise with the result of Grzegorz Braun, the far-right nationalist, but according to the members of the Civic Coalition who I spoke with here tonight, they said that this is something to be taken as a lesson, that perhaps some people were not too pleased with the state of affairs with where Poland is heading at, that it is a challenge for them to convince these voters to vote for Rafał Trzaskowski. So overall, there is a strong feeling here that Rafał Trzaskowski will win and that the hard work is only now beginning.
And that picture there reflects exactly that, I think, that, look, everyone's gone home and they're ready to campaign again tomorrow. Kazimierz Łysiak, thank you so much from Rafał Trzaskowski's campaign headquarters. And we'll go straight now to Gdansk, to the Law and Justice headquarters, where Karol Nawrocki gave his address just under an hour ago. Sonia Agata-Biszczan is standing by. Sonia, what's the vibe there? Because we've just come from Rafał Trzaskowski's camp and they've gone home and they're
seems
ready.
Quite empty.
Yeah, they're very empty. They've gone ready for the next fortnight. So what's the feeling like at Nawrocki HQ?
Well, the feeling is quite similar, I have to say. Things are definitely more quiet. For one, I can hear you a lot better now, so I think that's proof that indeed things are more quiet here as well. But people, as you were able to see and in my previous live, were definitely happy about the result as well, coming in second. Some describe this fight as David against Goliath. So overall, people here are quite happy about the result as well. I think to an extent, maybe they were more surprised, or at least they're portraying it as more a surprising result. But at the same time, they're also quite confident about the next steps. Another thing that I heard, I mentioned also in my previous live, that President has the veto power. Andrzej Duda has been using it, and it seems to be one of the bigger concerns for the Civic Coalition, for supporters of the Civic Coalition, what that type of collaboration with Karol Nawrocki potentially as president would mean for the future of decision-making. So this is what I inquired about here on the ground. And Law and Justice members that I spoke to were quick to say, well, Karol Nawrocki is the president of all people. He doesn't have a party affiliation. He will act in the benefit of everybody. But at the same time, we also see that he is here at the rally of Law and Justice. And when I dived a bit deeper, I was told, well, he would support any good decision, but perhaps not the bad ones. So I asked what would be the bad ones. And then I got some better answers, or more detailed answers. So in short, anything that would be a bit too pro-European, that could face potentially a veto from Karol Nawrocki as a potential president. So this is the backdrop against the coming 1st of June runoff election, and we will find out more then, I guess. Back to you.
And all eyes are now on that runoff on the 1st of June. It looks like both campaigns they're getting ready to go back to work.
Oh, yes. They're wrapping up for the night, you can definitely tell. But before we wrap up for the night, we still have some time, and we would like you to take a look at some of the sound bites, some of the most important, significant moments from the speeches made by both Rafał Trzaskowski and Karol Nawrocki right after the exit polls were out.
I'm going for the victory, to take care of Poland, strong Poland in the European Union and in NATO, so that we have the best possible relations with the US, partner relations. I want to guarantee you that the EU money will keep flowing. It won't be like 2 years ago when the money was being blocked. Today we all fight for democracy, we fight for equality. We fight for what us in Europe is the most important. I'm going for rich Poland. I want to win in the presidential election so that all of us can fulfill our dreams and aspirations, but also so that the ruling coalition can meet all their promises. On the first day after my victory, I will take care of hard work, and I can guarantee you an act that will abolish this medieval abortion law. I can guarantee that, and I promise to you an act on Silesian language. We are strong as a nation in our diversity, and we will do this together. I promise you a law, and I will enact it. A law which will put an end to everything that's happening in the Polish judiciary. Finally, we will put everything in order, and the courts will act faster. Yes, indeed, we will win in this election. We are ready for it. We are determined. And it will all end with our joint victory, Poland's victory. At the very beginning, I would like to thank millions of Poles who voted for me. Millions of Poles who did not succumb to the pressure and propaganda, to falsehood, to lies, who did not succumb to the strength of state institutions of Donald Tusk's state. They had the strength and courage and determination to cast a vote for their candidate, Karol Nawrocki. For this, a heartfelt welcome to all of you. I'm proud of this. I'm grateful and proud and obliged to all the voters. But first of all, I'm proud to be one of you. I'm proud to be one of you, and I will be the president of all the Polish men and women, and I will be your voice at the presidential palace. I promise you that.
But while Poland was choosing its new president, important events were taking place in the Central and Eastern Europe region and the world.
And Don Arleth, he is with us. He has the latest headlines across the region outside of the Polish election. Good evening, Don.
Good evening.
Give it to us, the latest on world news.
All righty, thank you guys. And now starting off here, it looks like polls in the runoff for the presidential election in Romania have closed. The two candidates facing off against each other are the anti-EU and nationalist populist candidate George Simeon and pro-EU candidate and Bucharest mayor Nicușor Dan. Now let's go live to our correspondent Pavel Czerwińska in the Romanian capital. Good evening, Pavel. So what do the exit polls say, and who is expected to win the election?
Well, Don, according to the polls, it is Bucharest mayor centrist Nicușor Dan who wins the runoff of presidential elections in Romania. Nicușor Dan, who ran as an independent and narrowly made it to the presidential runoff, having secured about 20% of the votes in the first round. And now, according to the exit polls, he got about 55% of the votes. So something that seemed impossible 2 weeks ago, to bridge the major gap to first George Simeon, who then scored around 40% of the votes, probably will happen. I would like you to listen to what Nicușor Dan had to say upon learning the results of exit polls.
Elections are not about politicians. Elections are about communities. And in today's election, a community of Romanians who want profound change in Romania won. I want to assure all of you, those who voted for me and those who did not vote for me, that I will do everything in my power so that the Romanian state finally serves the citizens of this country. Starting tomorrow, all of us, together, must begin the reconstruction of Romania.
And according to the exit polls results, Nicușor Dan wins with George Simeon by 10 percentage points. George Simeon, the leader of the right-wing Our Party, who won the first round by a landslide with around 40% of support and now secured around 45%. However, he claims also that he is victorious in these elections. Please listen.
I am the new president of Romania, and to all Romanians who are currently in line to exercise their democratic right, vote. We are the clear winners of this election. We claim victory in the name of the Romanian people. The Romanian people decided today that they want real change, a change for the better, that they finally want democracy.
One thing that needs to be considered when we are talking about exit polls result is the fact that typically they do not include the votes of the diaspora. The diaspora that in the first round of presidential elections voted predominantly for George Simeon, apart from the Romanians in Moldova, whose majority of votes went to Dan. So we will have to wait for the final vote count to determine the president of Romania. But for now, it seems that Dan will be the one. Back to you, Dan.
All right, Pavel Czerwińska reporting for us there from Bucharest. Thank you for that. Now, Nicușor Dan, the man projected to win Romania's runoff presidential election, has come out ahead despite early polls predicting his defeat to far-right rival George Simeon. Exit poll results show the pro-European mayor of Bucharest winning the election with 10 percentage point advantage.
Despite polls showing the two candidates being neck and neck, there can only be one winner. That man is Nicu Jordan, the mayor of Bucharest and centrist and pro-European Union candidate. Sunday's runoff was delayed by several months after Romania's constitutional court annulled the first round in the wake of far-right candidate Călin Georgescu's suspicious rise to first place, chalked up to Russian interference. In the run-up to the latest vote, many anticipated another far-right candidate, in this case George Simeon, to win. However, Dahen's pro-Ukraine and pro-EU stances won the Romanian public's favor, and through their votes chose to stay on course for good relations with the rest of the European bloc. According to exit polls from the Avant-Garde and Course agencies, Nicu Jordan beat George Simeon roughly 54% to 45%.
Ahead of a planned Monday phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, Russia launched the biggest drone strike on the country since 2022. A record 273 drones hit Ukraine overnight, killing at least one person and injuring several others. Now we turn to our correspondent in Kyiv, Oz Chatterjee, to tell us about the consequences of this unprecedented drone attack and how it's shaping expectations ahead of the Trump-Putin phone call.
Russia launched its largest drone attack of the war so far on Sunday, with the Ukrainian Air Force reporting that Russia launched 273 drones on the territory of Ukraine. One person was killed and homes were destroyed in this attack. Now, this comes as President Zelensky is in Rome for the inauguration of the new Pope, where he met with the US Vice President J.D. Vance on the sidelines. Speaking following that meeting, Zelensky said, "I reaffirm that Ukraine is ready to be engaged in real diplomacy and underscored the importance of a full and unconditional ceasefire as soon as possible." Now, this comes as Donald Trump is due to have a phone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday. The German Chancellor also confirmed that he will be speaking with President Trump before that phone conversation with Putin, as well as with the British Prime Minister, the French President, and also the Polish Prime Minister. So a lot more diplomacy to come next week while Russia continues to step up its attacks on Ukrainian cities. It's Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
While Poles and Romanians voted for their presidents on Sunday, Portuguese voters were casting ballots in their third parliamentary election in just 3 years. Sunday's snap election comes after Prime Minister Luis Montenegro's center-right minority government fell in March of this year. Ballots counted thus far point to some surprising results. Portugal's ruling center-right Democratic Alliance, or AD, was poised to win the most votes in Sunday's early parliamentary election, but fell short of a full majority, according to 3 exit polls, which placed the AD between 29 and 35.1%. The far-right Chega party secured around 20% of the vote, the polls indicated. AD leader and acting Prime Minister Luis Montenegro refuses to make any deals with the party. In the previous election in March of 2024, the AD won around 29%, leading to a minority government that collapsed a year later. To win an outright majority, a party needs to garner at least 42% of the vote. And that concludes this round of news services. Now I'm going to pass it back over to the table with Aaron, Klaudia.
Thank you so much for this breakdown of the latest news. This was Don Arleth joining us in the studio on this very special night.
And what a night.
Oh, indeed.
We have to take a big deep breath. Marcin, I guess to sum it up, I mean, what can we expect from the next 2 weeks? What are you seeing as the key thing, the key issue, the key something that will get either of these two candidates across the line? Because we know it will be so tight. We will be here in 2 weeks and we'll be looking at razor-tight margins, as you mentioned earlier.
Well, they will do the utmost to pick up endorsements now. So let's watch for what the people who didn't make it to the second round, what will they do? Yeah? Well, they're going to endorse either of the two candidates. That's number one. Number two, it is really like touring around the country and sort of, projecting their narrative. Yeah? So what Trzaskowski will be saying, I want to unlock the agenda which the government who's currently in power promised that it would deliver in October 2023. Because people elected something, then things did not happen. Like, for example, liberalization of abortion, civil union, lots of the kind of a liberal reforms, they didn't take place. And a lot of young people didn't want to go and vote now for this, for either of the candidates here.
Exactly. Will young people, will women go out and vote again for the reforms that they feel like they voted for in 2023?
That will depend on how strongly Rafał Trzaskowski projects that message, that this is about, delivery and unlocking of what was being promised in October 2023. That's going to be really the key things here. As for Mr. Nawrocki, he will be projecting the narrative. If you vote for me, you're going to have a sovereign Poland, the Poland that is not too cozy with Ukraine. He will probably project an even more anti-Ukrainian message that he has so far. And let's make it clear, he on a couple of occasions said that he would be against Ukraine joining EU and NATO. And he also said that he differs from the majority of Law and Justice Party and from his predecessor on this issue.
Regardless of what's going to happen, those 2 weeks, tour de force. I mean, what mental and physical stamina it's going to take for both of them to actually be able to complete this run.
And we will be here for every step of the way. That is all for our special coverage of the 2025 Polish presidential election. We will be back right here in 2 weeks' time for that final runoff.
And I would like to say thank you, Aaron Dahmen, Chief Political Correspondent here on TVP World, Marcin Zaborowski, Editor for Europe. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you then.